Hey, Dr. Bill Sinyard here, the president of Gospel App Ministries and the creator of The Forgiving Path and Good Enough Parents 1 and 2. Good Enough Parents 1 is still free. I am concerned, very concerned about the well-beings of teens and tweens today. Frustrated Christian parents, we need big-time help. And I'm, Captain Obvious, right? But per the CDC, suicide and homicide rates for ages 10 to 24 are the highest they have been in decades, right, since '68. Shocking 42% of adolescents are experiencing sadness and hopelessness. That's up 50% from 2011. 57% of females. 22% of all students have considered attempting suicide, which is up 36%. It's a mental health crisis for one of our most vulnerable demographics, adolescents. Anxiety is up. Loneliness is up, gender dysphoria, confusion up, religion, church attendance is down. Well, who can we blame? You can blame the degeneration of the family unit. You can blame social media, surely. The U.S. Surgeon General reported that social media is a major concern to teen mental health, including depression and anxiety. 46% of adolescents aged 13 to 17 said social media makes them feel worse about their body image. So today in the show, I want to give you a simplified class on the attachment theory related to teens and tweens. I think you're going to find things that might help you in your context. How can already good enough parents of teens and tweens become just a little more good enough parents? Everything I'm going to say will have a firm biblical foundation and informed by attachment theory and the latest in neuroscience. So we're going to look at the important notion of attunement in relationships, particularly with your teen and tween. Then we're going to go deeper into the two main attachment theory categories of insecure children. Don't worry about getting lost in the scientific weeds. I've got you. Just trust me. I'm going to give you some helpful tips after that to help your teen become a little more secure, and you can do this. I'm also going to say a little about social media and its dangers for teens, but of course I could do a whole class on that some other time. All right. Here's an excellent, overarching guiding principle. One of my favorite quotes from a well-known secular child psychiatrist, Urie Bronfenbrenner. Just listen. Every child needs at least one adult who is irrationally crazy about him or her. And parent, that should be you. Single parent, couples, that should be you. This is what your child's midbrain is jonesing for 24/7, even if they're saying something else. If you can only take one thing away from this class, this show, this is it. The goal for parents and caregivers, for youth ministers, is 33% of all interactions with the teen, with your teen, should reflect Urie Bronfenbrenner, right? And I'm going to give you some tips and tricks how to do that. Now, that's 33%. That's not 90%. That's not even half, 50%. So it's very doable, even by the most overwhelmed parent, single or couple. Those of you who may have not had an ideal relationship with your child, good enough parents are just locked into skilled attuning, 30% of the interactions with their teens. All right? All right, what is attunement? Let's look at it. Attachment theory is all about attunement. Researchers believe that if parents, caregivers, guardians regularly attuned with their child, again, 1 out of 3 times, doable, all things equal, your teen and tween would be more confident, more secure, more able to emotionally regulate, less prone to addiction, have better relationships, and overall just be happier, easier to get along with. Just dream about that for a little bit. And remember, that's not 90% attunement interactions or 70%. It's 1 out of 3. I'm going to talk a lot about adolescent attunement, but to understand attunement better, let's go all the way back to infant attunement. Are you with me? All right. So imagine a mother with a newborn It could be any caregiver, by the way, holding her infant close to her face. Their eyes connect. Chemicals are popping in the mother's brain, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, but also in the baby's brain. Brain scans show that during attunement in particular, there are important positive neural connections that are rapidly forming in the baby's head. A miracle is happening, a miracle of becoming in sync. So the mother laughs, the baby laughs. The mother says goo goo, the baby responds. It's an emotional and psychical dance. Mothers, you know what I'm talking about. This dance is critical to the emotional and relational development of the infant. Attunement is as important to the child's growing brain and emotions as food is to his or her body. Here's one child expert. Attunement is the process of a parent feeling the child's feelings, absorbing those feelings, and reflecting them back to the baby, so the baby knows he has been seen, heard, and understood. Attunement communicates to the child, I get you. I understand and empathize with what you're feeling. A baby is so in tune with mom, the caregiver, that when she holds, rocks, and cuddles her infants, the heartbeat of her baby synchronizes with her own. Wow. See, studies have shown that infants whose caregivers did not effectively attune, right, the 1 out of 3 interactions during that period from 0 to 2 years of age, they have later learning difficulties. They have increased addiction proneness in adolescence and even adulthood. They have proneness to ADHD, anxiety, and fearfulness more than other children. Reduction of the ability to self-regulate emotionally, impulse control, think about your teen. Reduction of dopamine receptors, which, science aside, it just means they're going to be more addictive prone later in life. Yeah? If 1 out of 3 interactions between mom and infants was attuning, or parent and infants, the child, all other things equal, will enter their next step of life, next stage of life, secure. So look, attachment theorists say if 1 out of 3 interactions with infants with their caregiver was attuning, the child, all other things equal, will enter their next stage of life secure. Parents, 1 out of 3, you've got this. All right. But I'm speaking to parents of teens, right? What if you're a parent of a teen and tween, you realize you can't go back, your teen is what they are? Well, good news. God has given you a neural mulligan, a chance at a redo, to repair broken connections, right? Just before puberty, your tween's neural connections explode. Think chia pet in their brain. Your tween begins to experience the neural excitement of newer and faster brain connections, fully online pleasure center, the nucleus accumbens, where all addictions and dopamine release happens. And their prefrontal cortex, bad news, is not fully online for another decade. And that's where your brain asks the question, I wonder if that's a good idea. It's not online. Don't even let them try to convince you it is. They may sound reasonable, but they're in their brain, they're not. During the rest of adolescence, largely based on their experiences with caregivers, primarily, good or bad, of attunement, and that's from you, from others, from peers, and now social media, their brain is going to severely prune connections that are not used or regularly enforced. This to use it or lose it. So what that means, parents and caregivers, this is a critical open door to influence the person your child is going to become, more so than any other time other than infancy. You've got this. I'm going to show you some tips. All right? Look at the diagram representing neural connectivity and density for a 7-year-old versus a 15-year-old. I mean, you can see the 50% reduction. So there's lots of pruning going on, and you're part of that. It's important. Be intentional. Let me put it a different way. Check this out. If you knew, parents, the 2 questions that your teen's subconscious midbrain is asking 24/7, I mean, OCD-ish, wouldn't that make you a very dangerous parent? Right? Some suggest it's a single question, is there anyone out there for me? I like that, but I think we need to unpack that into 2 subconscious questions that your tween and teen's brain is asking OCD 24/7. Number 1, is there anyone out there who I can count on, who has my back, no matter what? Someone who's got me when I mess up. And the word we use is connectedness. Remember that? I'll come back to it. Second question is, am I lovable enough for someone, for anyone, as I am? And that's the word enoughness. Right? Is there someone whose face lights up when I enter the room, who runs over to let me know how glad they are that I'm here, who really wants to hang, who laughs at my jokes, who gets me, yeah? Am I lovable enough? Enoughness. Parents, I think you're going to find this helpful. Beneath every struggle, emotional breakdown, lie, disobedience, explosion at the dinner table when you say, eat your kale. All right, never mind, not kale, I get it. Kale's terrible, right? Anyway, it's their midbrain, think they're subconscious, at the point that they're not even aware, jonesing for answers to those two questions. Good enough parents have learned how to be the answer to those two questions. In the teens' brains, at least 1 out of 3 interactions. Again, I'm going to show you some tips how to do that. More in Good Enough Parent online. All right, let's dig into attachment theory a little. You're going to be experts at attachment theory after this show. So we're going to use a diagram, a free online resource in Good Enough Parent. It incorporates both enoughness and connectedness in graphic form. Okay? The vertical axis, the connectedness axis, is your teen's expectation and experience of positive connectedness. That's higher on the axis, or fear of unhealthy connectedness, which is lower on the axis. Simply, do I look to relationships for my sense of worth and security or not? Or even more simply, can I count on others? Is there anyone out there that I trust to have my back? The horizontal axis, the x-axis, is the teen's inner sense of enoughness. A positive sense of enoughness to the right reflects a healthy self-regard that does not require much external validation from the outside. Others, social media, success, peers. I feel loved. I feel part of a relationship, a group where I would be missed if I wasn't there. This spectrum is the answer to his or her unspoken question, am I worthy of being loved or seen as lovable? Okay? So the two axes form 4 quadrants of attachment styles, going counterclockwise, starting from the upper right quadrant: secure, anxious, fearful, and avoidant. 1 secure and 3 insecure. All right? Well, let's talk about your teen. Here's a portion of the attachment style survey for parents of teens from the free online program, Good Enough Parent 1. So look at the 3 paragraphs and discern which one is most like your teen, most reflects your teen. For time purposes, I've left out quadrant 3, fearful. It's really a composite of both anxious and avoidant. And by the way, don't think that if your child is anxious or avoidant or fearful that they're broken somehow or wrong or that you're naturally a bad parent. It just means that they're human in a fallen world that Paul refers to as groaning. And look, COVID didn't help, all right? Paragraph number 1. It's relatively easy for my teen to become emotionally close to others. My teen is comfortable depending on others and having them depend upon him or her. My teenager doesn't worry about being alone. My teenager feels that others generally accept him or her. Paragraph number 2. My teen is comfortable without close emotional relationships. It's important for my teenager to feel independent and self-sufficient. My teenager prefers not to depend on others or have them depend upon him or her. Others seem generally impersonal and distant to my teenager. Paragraph 3. My teenager wants to be completely intimate with others. My teenager often finds that others are reluctant to get as close as he or she would like. My teenager is uncomfortable being without close relationships. My teen sometimes worries that others don't value him or her as much as she values them. Okay? So paragraph 1, put the label secure. Paragraph 2, avoidant. And paragraph 3, anxious. Yeah? Okay, now that we've identified your child, hopefully, and you can play with that some, I want to dig deeper into all 3 of those: secure, anxious, and avoidant. Okay, secure first. Secure children, teens, have a high sense of connectedness, the vertical, and a high sense of enoughness, horizontal. To the internal question, can I count on people? Their inner working model will tend to answer, yeah. To the internal question, am I worthy of others' love? The unspoken answer is, yeah. So the secure child expresses a resilience in the face of stress, optimism, high self-esteem, curiosity, a sense of belonging. They're able to tolerate ambiguity. They can regulate emotional breakdowns. They can grasp and tolerate different perspectives. They're empathetic. They're compassionate. They have an openness to people who are perceived as different from oneself. They're good at relationships and a tendency towards altruistic action. So secure teens tend to trust that their parents and other adults will provide support for them in their natural exploration of the world. If this is your teen, don't screw it up. Dance a little bit, right? All right, let's look at the insecure attachments, which is probably a little more than half the population. Here we go. Avoidant, which is me, by the way. Avoidant teens generally have a positive sense of self-worth, enoughness, right? That's horizontal. So meaning they're capable of doing things on their own. But they lack expectation that relationships are good for them. Connectedness, the vertical axis. And again, this teenager is not broken. He or she is very human based upon the cards they have been dealt. So I'm in this category, right? And right, to quote Monty Python, I got better. Anyway, you look it up if you don't know the reference. For that avoidant teen, attachment needs are minimized and compulsive self-reliance becomes the order of the day. They subconsciously fear connectedness, subconsciously, because it stirs up old fears and wounds related to enoughness. Their fondest childhood dreams are about him or her spending time alone. They're self-reliant. And I remember, I had friends in my neighborhood, but I really enjoyed spending a whole day out in the woods. I'm from Louisiana, so by the bayous, I had all kind of fun and games and exploration by myself. It was great, some of my best times. Yep, I'm weird. They do things without telling others. They're stressed by relationship issues of others. Most of the daily stress is responding to the relational issues of family. So they can be resentful and irritable when their family brings up issues all the time, particularly at dinner time. Why can't they just chill and not take themselves so seriously? They feel trapped when their caregiver comes too close. They may feel irritable when they need to shift from doing their own thing to interacting with others. They need more space in their relationships. A highly sensitive radar for manipulation, right? Being blamed or being criticized. And what happens is they'll initiate disengagement protocol, right? They'll go to their room or they'll go outside, whatever. They can be filtered. So they focus on ideas versus talking about their problems or themselves or how they're feeling. People tell them that they're not in touch with their feelings. You know, they're just hard-pressed to list present needs. People say they have commitment issues. You know, they go, conflict, what conflict? See, don't want to deal with problems. We prefer to deal with conflicts quickly. They can be passive-aggressive, and when a fear cycle kicks in, they're gonna flight. They're gonna run. Maybe that's your child. Maybe that's you. Let's look at anxious category. The anxious teen likely was subconsciously dissatisfied, again, subconsciously frustrated with the amount of attention they received from one or both of their parents or caregivers, which made them feel not enough. I'm not casting blame. I'm just saying that's where it comes from. To get rid of that pain, to soothe themselves, they learn to leverage, manipulate relationships to feel better about themselves, and largely through attention-getting strategies. As infants, they might have just kept crying until some face appeared in front of them. Teens do the same thing. So in psych terms, they still need others to emotionally regulate. So they have worries, and it may trigger in panic about being abandoned, dismissed, left out, FOMO, betrayed. Habitualized attention-getting strategies. You know, when fear cycle's triggered, a fight response initiates. They're going to protest the distance. They're going to blame others and get the attachment figure to pay more attention to them, even if it's anger. They crave connectedness that always seems just out of their reach. They externalize, meaning they blame others more than themselves. They can tend towards perfectionism. They may believe subconsciously that if they're perfect, they will gain more love, acceptance, and attention from others. So they can be workaholics. They can be very dissatisfied ones, but workaholics. Their inner working models' goals, their subconscious brain's goals, are not for a good work product necessarily, but being recognized for the work. It's all about being recognized. They need credit. They need acknowledgement for their efforts and their opinions and their thoughts and their work product. They're quick to share unfiltered emotions with others. This is how it makes me feel. Look, they're considered high maintenance and honestly unsatisfiable. When fear cycle kicks in, they're going to fight. Here's a quote I think tells it all. Being in a relationship with someone who is acting out an anxious attachment style can feel like dealing with an angry customer while staffing a support complaint desk, right? So now let's look at adolescent attunement. Right? So what do? If your child is secure, don't mess with it. Just dance a little bit. But for the rest of us, well over half, here's some things that you can do to push them a little bit towards that secure category. All right? Here it is. Random attunement statements. So sometime during the day, 1 out of 3 interactions if you can, throughout the week, stop them and say to them, I just want to tell you how impressed I am with the man or woman you're becoming, where you're growing up to be. I would buy stock in you. I think that you will change the world somehow. I think that whoever marries you is going to be very, very lucky. I just want to tell you that. Good talk, and then walk away. It's random. It's drip, drip, drip. You're not requiring anything. You're not manipulating. You're just saying something to your child. And look, I get it. They may feel very awkward at first, but and maybe for the first 20 times you do it, but the seeds are being planted in their midbrain. So when they crash or burn or feel desperately lonely and unlovable, their brain's going to go, hey, wait, I remember it felt really good when your dad said how amazing you are. Yeah, maybe it's okay to go and chat with him. There's a shoulder move that I would add to this. I think it's a lot of fun. We talk about that a lot in Good Enough Parent 2, an entire show on it. But there's neuroscience behind it. But if you could put your hand on your child's shoulder and tap about at the speed of their heartbeat and then say these things, something about that opens up their brain to the suggestion. Makes them a little bit more receptive, right? The goal of all of these random attunement statements is to plant a seed, just a single small seed, a mustard seed in their midbrain, that you've got their back no matter what. Connectedness, right? And you see them as lovable. Enough. That's enoughness. Yeah? Now, best time to do this, even though it doesn't feel like it, is during conflict and disagreements. And again, much more in Good Enough Parent 1 and Good Enough Parent 2. Look at them in the eyes when you're disagreeing, shoulder move, and be passionate, honest. I just want to tell you, I am really excited about the person you're becoming. I'm your biggest fan. I'd buy stock into you. But we're going to disagree. And sometimes big time. But I want to tell you, even so, I'm not going anywhere. You can't get rid of me. There's nothing you can do to push me away. I will always be there for you. I will never walk away from you. I've got you. But no, you can't go to Johnny's without his parents there. Good talk, and let him blow up, let her blow up. The seed has been planted. Are you with me? So for an anxious child, you're giving them a little shot of enoughness, leveraging just a little to become more secure. For the avoidant child, you're giving them a little shot at connectedness, particularly the shoulder move. You're leveraging them a little towards being secure. Their future spouses and children and grandchildren will appreciate all that you do. Yeah? All right. I want to say quickly in a few seconds that I have left, social media brief. Dealing with the neuroscience behind social media is a whole other show, but here's the bottom line related to social media. It is wildly addictive to teens and tweens. It affects the exact same dopamine reward cycle that crack cocaine does. Crack is by far more powerful dope hit, but social media is legal and it's around 24/7, and its algorithms are very powerful. Its benefits do not outweigh its risk and harm. So here are my suggestions related to social media for teens. No smartphones for kids before high school, period. 2, smartphones banned in all schools. There's flip phones. You can use flip phones. Get rid of smartphones in all schools. 3, read better stories. Surround your children, particularly tweens, with better stories that displace your child's attention to social media. And 4, emphasize getting out, sports, hobbies, anything face-to-face with another human being. All right, in closing, I want to talk about better stories. Most teens, white, Hispanic, and black, per Pew Research, are active on the big four social media platforms: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat. 1 in 5 constantly. A third say that social media has a negative effect on them and their lives, and over half say it would be very hard or hard to give it up. You know what all that means? Social media is addictive. This is addicts talk. And overall, it has a negative effect on our kids. But here's what we know about addiction. You can't just stop an addiction, or rarely so. You must displace it with a healthy addiction, one that builds security, good identity, compassion for others, and is hopeful. 7 decades ago, C.S. Lewis penned his popular children's fantasies, The Chronicles of Narnia, to give the post-World War II English adolescents comfort and hope after the horrors of Hitler's Third Reich. The 7 books, not only resonated and helped the children of war-torn England, but 120 million readers since. Lewis believed, and I agree, I am totally buying this, that stories actually change insecure readers, some for good and others for harm. They can make them more secure, more insecure. If he were alive today, I think Lewis would say that our increasingly anxious and avoidant 10 to 15-year-olds need better stories, and a lot of them, fast. So what makes for better tales? First, all of Lewis's fantasies, and Tolkien as well, always had an ideal, heroic super protagonist, right? Think Aslan or think Gandalf, who was inherently good, selfless, powerful, and even willing to die for the sake of the other lesser protagonists, the Pevensie children. With Aslan present, the readers would kind of have this inherent expectation that there'll be a happy ending. The Pevensie family will be protected and will thrive, even when they're exposed to ridiculously overwhelming dangers, evil antagonists, epic battles. It was narrative comfort food for insecure, beat-up teens. Right? And by the way, adults as well. It's brain science. Put an insecure child among other insecure children, and the end result is predictable. Similarly, give an insecure child a story with a good super protagonist who by nature protects and rescues the vulnerable, and that result is also predictable. One situation exacerbates insecurities, the other comforts and reduces anxiety and avoidance a little or a lot. Here's Lewis. Since it is so likely that they, the children, will meet cruel enemies, let them at least have heard of brave knights and heroic courage. Otherwise, you're making their destiny not brighter, but darker. In my terms, not more secure, but more insecure. For in fairy tales, Lewis continues, side by side with the terrible figures, we find the immemorial comforters and protectors, the radiant ones. And the terrible figures are not merely terrible, but sublime. Yeah. Better stories also include consolation. Tolkien was huge on this. One scholar writes, consolation requires that the right order of the world is restored. This means punishment of the evildoer, tantamount to the elimination of evil from the hero's world. And then nothing stands any longer in the way of the heroes living happily ever after. And Lewis agrees. Let there be wicked kings and beheadings and battles and dungeons, giants and dragons, and let the villains be soundly killed at the end of the book. Today, maybe Harry Potter has done that a little, at least at the end of the series. Professor Dumbledore taking on the role of the good super protagonist. But listen, stories like Hunger Games, Dune, Marvel movies, very little expectation of consolation at the end. Great stories, well written, but, I think it can make our children more insecure. So listen, because I'm buying all this, I actually wrote and published a new Lewis-esque fantasy, The Tale of the Unlikely Prince. It's for today's 10 to 15-year-olds, the next gens. It has an overarching super protagonist. There's consolation at the end. Insecure teen Prince Yeled wants to finally prove to his adoptive father that he's worthy of being a prince heir, right? Think connectedness and enoughness. But what could he possibly do? He asked for a quest, a great quest, a historically astonishing quest, challenging enough to prove his enoughness, and finally earn the king's respect and love. Yeled will have to learn through thrilling, quirky, and sometimes unbelievable twists and turns that not all quests are what they might seem, and more importantly, the king is definitely not what he appears. So, think of the Tale of the Unlikely Prince as a competitor and a fun alternative to social media's dangerous algorithms for your young teens. 2 other similar stories of the Kingdom Quest trilogy are going to be available later on this summer, so just enjoy. I want to remind you of Good Enough Parent. It's free, it's online, foundational gospel that dialogues with up-to-date neuroscience and attachment theory, www.goodenoughparent.online, 15 short video tips which are sent to you 1 a day for 15 days. Here's what people say about it. My child isn't isolating as much. I'm more relaxed as a parent and asking God to direct my words with my child. I found the tips regarding brain development and attachment styles to be very helpful. Reasoning with a brain that's still developing doesn't go well. I agree. Well, I hope that helps. If you have any other questions, email me, bill@gospel-app.com. Love to hear from you. In the meantime, take heart, child of God.